This girl always woke up at exactly 3:33 am. She quietly walked downstairs as usual. She poured herself a small glass of wine to dispel her insomnia. But Lucy suddenly saw her son Eden suddenly appear. Panic made her drop the glass of wine. The sound of broken glass echoed in the quiet night. However, this was no longer strange to Lucy. For many years, this situation had been repeated. Eden often wandered around the house in the middle of the night. His eyes were empty like a sleepwalker. No matter how Lucy called softly or asked, Eden remained silent. He just stared blankly at a dark corner, as if there was something there that only he could see. Over the years, because of Eden's illness, Lucy had seen many psychiatrists, but not only could the doctors not cure Eden, they also could not find the cause of his condition. That day, Lucy saw another doctor. After the doctor heard Eden's condition, she guessed that it was sleepwalking. Lucy interrupted and explained that she had been examining this problem for a long time. Sleepwalkers have no memories, but her son remembered everything that happened. The doctor was curious and asked Eden why he was wandering around the house in the middle of the night. But the boy answered a very confusing question that Meredith was crying. Lucy explained that it was nothing serious, and Meredith was Eden's imaginary friend. However, the doctor discovered a more serious problem. Eden seemed to have no emotions. He was not happy, not angry, not sad, not happy. Eden was completely like a corpse. Of course, the doctor did not say this last sentence. Suddenly, Eden said that he did not belong here, so he had to leave immediately. The doctor felt helpless when she heard that. She advised Lucy to find someone better to help Eden, but the strange things did not stop there. Lucy is currently working at a child protection organization. She recently received a case. There was a man who often beat his wife and daughter. Lucy made an appointment to meet and talk with Mason, according to the regulations. However, he said that he only liked to drink and that he had never harmed his wife and children. When Lucy heard these words, a few horrifying images suddenly flashed through her mind. A bloody doll appeared in her mind. The pale face of a little girl also appeared. Those images made her shiver. Lucy's sixth sense was very sharp. She could sense what was about to happen. She was sure that this man was lying. So Lucy warned Mason that if he dared to beat his wife and children again, she would ask the police to take measures to protect them. Mason cursed after hearing this. He thought she was only good at minding other people's business. While everyone was talking, a murder suddenly occurred in an apartment. The victim's name was Rod. He was seriously injured in the head and died in his home. The two local police officers in charge of the area, Dylan and Nick, conducted a preliminary investigation. They found that the victims' relationships were very simple. Apart from Rod being a bit of a womanizer, he had almost no bad habits. The possibility of the victim being murdered out of hatred was very low. Dylan and Nick then continued to ask the neighbors nearby. A neighbor said that about 2 weeks ago, a red sports car appeared in the area. The neighbor was sure that the car did not belong to a resident here. The car was covered with tickets and the owner had never moved it. Other than that, nothing unusual happened. Dylan and Nick felt very stuck. The crime scene was clean without a trace. Cases like this are usually the most difficult to solve. At 3:33 am, Lucy woke up again. She still drank a sip of wine as usual, but when Lucy looked at the picture, she felt scared. She vaguely felt that Eden might have really seen something, so Lucy hurriedly ran to Eden's room. She anxiously hugged the boy in her arms, but the boy was staring straight ahead and asked who that man was. But when Lucy turned around, she saw no one. She was extremely scared. The next day, Lucy visited Mason's house. The person who opened the door for her was his wife, Chloe. The small house was very clean. Chloe's daughter was a very cute girl. She wanted to share her toys with Lucy. However, as soon as Lucy lowered her head, she was horrified to realize that the toys in her hands were covered in blood. Lucy hurriedly told Chloe that she absolutely must not let Mason into the house. If necessary, Chloe could call Lucy at any time. After Lucy finished her work, she took her son to the psychologist. The psychiatrist asked for many details. Lucy casually said that she always woke up at 3:33 am. She tried changing her seat, drinking alcohol, and taking sleeping pills, but none of them worked. No matter what time Lucy went to sleep, she always woke up at 3:33 am. While Lucy and the psychiatrist were talking, the phone suddenly rang. The psychiatrist felt that Lucy might need some therapy. That night, Lucy's ex-husband came to see her. But when they had only spoken a few sentences, Lucy received a call. Chloe's voice on the other end of the line was full of urgency. She said that Mason was banging on the door frantically. He seemed to have gone crazy. Lucy told Chloe to call the police immediately. But as soon as Lucy hung up, several images flashed before her eyes. Lucy saw Chloe's daughter's body, the bloody doll, and Mason being taken away by the police. Lucy was worried, so she immediately drove to Chloe's house. When she arrived, the house house was surrounded by police cars. Lucy realized that she might have been a step too late, but Lucy was glad to see that Chloe and her daughter were safe. It turned out that the dead person was Mason. This time, the people who took over the case were still Dylan and Nick. They quickly realized that Mason and Rod's deaths were exactly the same. It was truly an unbelievable coincidence. After a brief discussion, the police decided to expand the investigation. Someone went through the car management agency to find information about Rod. The police went to the red sports car that the neighbor had mentioned. Inside was a hotel key. Dylan and Nick followed the clue from the key and went to a hotel. Because the two had not yet obtained a search warrant, the hotel owner refused to let them in to search. Nick glanced at the dog next to him and said that if the owner did not allow them to search, they would take the dog away. The landlady had no choice but to lead them to the room that the key holder had rented. Unexpectedly, there was an additional lock on the door, but Nick used his own skills and easily broke the lock. Then the two police officers entered the suspect's room. There were many photos and notes posted here. All of them had the same sentence: "Where is Lucy?" Nick thought for a moment and then concluded that Lucy was most likely the next target of the killer, so the police had to quickly find Lucy. But Lucy was a fairly common name, so it was difficult for the police to determine exactly who the next victim was. At the same time, in another place, Lucy entered the toy store. She encouraged her son to choose a toy he liked. If it were another child, he would definitely be happy to hear that. However, Eden did not react at all. Like every time before, the boy chose a toy flower, but when Eden got home, he immediately threw the toy aside. Eden had no intention of playing with it at all. Lucy helplessly opened the drawer and put the toy flower in. Time passed quickly to the next week. Lucy went to Chloe's house again. Although Mason had died, his wife Chloe did not seem too sad, but Chloe still had some regrets. If she had opened the door for him that night, he might not have suffered such a tragic fate. After all, it was a precious life. But that day, Chloe felt something strange. She felt like someone had stabbed her in the chest. Lucy said that it might be Chloe's sixth sense. The dead cannot be brought back to life, so she shouldn't blame herself too much. That night at dinner, Eden mentioned Mia again. The boy's eyes glanced strangely to the side. Eden said that Mia lived right here. Lucy just thought that Eden was talking nonsense. But then something even stranger happened. The next day, someone new moved into the house next door. Lucy went over to greet the neighbors. Unexpectedly, she heard that their daughter's name was Mia. When Lucy heard that name, she was immediately scared. While Lucy was talking to the landlady named Debbie, she saw a burn mark on her face. However, the burn mark returned to normal in a moment. Lucy tried to stay calm and asked Mia where she studied. Unexpectedly, Debbie said that their family had just moved from the city next door. Lucy felt confused and puzzled. So how did Eden get to know Mia? While Lucy was still wondering what was going on, a toy caught her eye. Lucy felt strangely compelled. She took out her son's favorite toy. She placed the flower on the toy. Unexpectedly, it actually matched. Lucy could only smile at this moment. She didn't know if she was happy or worried about this. At the same time, Eden was standing in the schoolyard. He had a closed personality and was often bullied by his friends. A friend discovered an interesting thing. No matter what the boy ordered Eden, he would follow. For example, when someone asked Eden to slap him in the face, he would immediately do it. Even though Eden slapped himself until his nose bled, he had absolutely no intention of stopping. The teacher quickly informed the parents of this. After Lucy heard the news, she was extremely depressed, partly because she was angry with the bully, partly because she could not understand why her son was so strange. Since childhood, Eden had no emotions at all. He lived like a walking corpse. At the same time, Dylan and Nick were following the photo taken at the hotel. They found Lucy's workplace. The two policemen immediately recognized the person in the photo. This person was definitely the Lucy they were looking for. It was possible that she was the killer's next target. At this time, Lucy returned home with her son. When she discovered that the main door was open, she told her son to wait outside. She quietly walked inside. Broken glass was scattered all over the floor. She thought that a bad guy had broken into the house. Unexpectedly, the person who came was her ex-husband. James said that he needed to go to the bathroom urgently, so he broke the window to get into the house. Lucy breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that. At this moment, he suddenly proposed to get back together with her, but she refused immediately without thinking. The reason was because James hated Eden very much. James even suspected that Eden was not his biological child. The two had argued many times over this matter before. Today, they argued again. After arguing, James angrily left. Lucy ran after James and asked him to return the key, but James said he did not need the key to enter the house. Lucy was stunned for a few seconds after hearing that. Then she immediately rushed into the house, because there might be someone else inside. After Lucy anxiously searched the whole house, she couldn't find her son. The worst thing that happened was that Eden had disappeared. At this time, Dylan heard from Lucy's superior that she had gone out to pick up Eden's son. This information immediately reminded him of the killer's room, where the name Eden also appeared. After Dylan and Nick got Lucy's home address, the two of them immediately went there. When the two policemen arrived, they found Lucy almost mentally broken, but her ex-husband still said nonsense. He thought that Eden was just taken out by a psychopath. But Dylan said that this was not that simple. This was a serial murder case. There were two victims who had died, Rod and Mason. Their photos were both found in the killer's room. Eden's name was also on the note. The moment Lucy saw Rod's photo, several images immediately appeared in her mind. Lucy suddenly said that Rod should end his life. Dylan was surprised to hear that. He said that Rod had been murdered. He spread more photos and notes on the table. Lucy also looked at them carefully. She found a drawing of Eden's watch on one of the pieces of paper. The problem was that the watch had been broken for a long time. Eden had not worn it for a long time. Lucy really couldn't understand how the murderer knew about this watch. The moment Lucy turned her head, a handprint suddenly appeared on the glass door, but it disappeared quickly. This scene startled Lucy. At the same time, in another place, Lucy's mother was living in a nursing home. She was laughing loudly in front of the off-TV screen. She kept interacting as if she was watching an interesting program. The nurse thought that Lucy's mother was talking to herself, so she turned on the TV. Unexpectedly, what Lucy's mother had just said was the answer to the question being shown on the show. The nurse was extremely surprised when she saw this. What was even more frightening was that Lucy's mother was talking to the empty chair next to her, as if someone was sitting there. 2 days later, Lucy went to see a psychologist again. For the past 2 days, she had been seeing images of an old house. There was an old violin in the hallway of that house. There was also a door in the living room. Those scenes looked extremely real, as if Lucy had been there before. The psychologist analyzed the human brain has to process a lot of information every day, so it is normal for it to be confused from time to time. The doctor advised Lucy to take medicine and rest on time. Lucy took the medicine as the doctor advised. But that night, she woke up at exactly 3:33 am. There were slight noises upstairs. Lucy heard the noise upstairs, so she turned on the flashlight and climbed the stairs. A scary shadow suddenly appeared before her eyes. She was so startled that she almost fell down, but when she calmly looked back, the shadow had disappeared. Lucy hurriedly put away the wooden stairs, but right after that, a creepy laugh came from downstairs. Lucy immediately looked down, but she saw nothing. However, the laughter continued to ring out. She lost control and screamed angrily, but when she turned back, the stairs opened again. She panicked and ran back to her room. A moment later, she went out to check the situation again. She found that the stairs had been retracted. She worriedly went into bed, but when she lay down, she saw a scary face appear in a flash. When it was morning, Lucy took the address that Dylan had given her. She decided to visit Rod's family, the first victim in the serial murder case. The person who received Lucy was Rod's wife. The two talked for a while. Lucy realized that this house looked very familiar. She used the excuse of going to the bathroom to look around. In the hallway, Lucy saw a very old violin. It was exactly the same as the picture she had seen before. Relying on her memory, she sneaked into the study. There, she saw bloodstains on the carpet that had not been cleaned. There was also a safe on the bookshelf. Lucy entered the password based on her memory. Unexpectedly, the safe was actually opened. Inside was a real estate certificate and a key. Lucy's mind flashed with the image of that old house. Her intuition told her that Eden was probably there. Lucy secretly took the key from the safe and gave Dylan the address of the old house. She had just heard Rod's wife mention that it was another property of his. Lucy was about to drive there, but just then, the nursing home nurse called to inform her that Lucy's mother was also missing. Lucy felt extremely depressed. This wasn't the first time this had happened. Lucy's mother had often disappeared like this before. Lucy drove to the place her mother often went to. Sure enough, her mother was there. Lucy didn't have time to take her mother back to the nursing home, so she had to take her mother to Rod's old house. Dylan and Nick arrived first. They broke down the door and entered. After a while of searching, they found Eden's watch. Lucy arrived a while later. She told her mother not to wander around. Then Lucy got out of the car and walked in alone. When Lucy saw her son's watch, she felt like her whole world was collapsing before her eyes. The two policemen searched everywhere, but they didn't find anyone there. Lucy's intuition told her that there was a door behind the cabinet. She approached and pushed the cabinet open. Sure enough, the door appeared before everyone's eyes. Lucy took out the key she had just taken from the safe. The key was suitable to open this door. At the same time, Lucy's mother seemed to have heard some noise outside. Ignoring Lucy's warning, she got out of the car and walked deep into the forest alone. She didn't expect to see her grandson here. Eden sat alone in a daze, and he didn't show any fear. He just said that he shouldn't be in this place. Lucy's mother also agreed with this. Finally, someone understood Eden. This place that Eden said wasn't just a specific place, but the whole world. She led her grandson out of the jungle. Meanwhile, Lucy had walked through a strange door. Under the door was a basement. In the basement was a dreamy castle. There was also a camera. The content inside was unacceptable. Only then did everyone realize that Rod had a sick hobby with children. Perhaps countless children had been brought here. Lucy really couldn't imagine what her son had gone through. Dylan advised Lucy not to disturb the scene. When Lucy ran out the door, she saw her mother holding Eden's hand standing in front of her. She was extremely happy to see her son was safe. After the police questioned him for a while, they found out that Eden was not kidnapped. The boy had left home on his own. The reason was that a man had told Eden that he did not belong to this world and that he needed to leave as soon as possible. Eden said that he got into a black car and went into the woods. Then the driver left the boy behind. Nick curiously asked what that person looked like. Unexpectedly, Eden raised his hand and pointed straight at Dylan. This scene was both strange and confusing. It made Dylan unable to forget it for a long time. He thought about it for a long time, but still could not understand why the image of Eden's watch was in the murderer's room. After all, how did all of this relate to each other? Nick advised Dylan not to think so much. Because Eden's disappearance was over, the child was found, so Dylan didn't have to think about it anymore. A few days later, Lucy took on a new case. A 17-year-old boy named Aiden had not returned home for a long time. Lucy's mission was to help him find his way back to the right path. Lucy and her colleagues went to Aiden's house to meet his mother. His mother did not care at all about where he had gone. Lucy saw a balloon by the sink and took out her phone to take a picture, but Aiden's mother was angry about this. She even rushed over and snatched Lucy's phone for no reason. But Lucy calmly restrained Aiden's mother onto the table. Lucy reacted very quickly. She was also stunned to the point of being speechless. It felt like she had practiced this many times before. That night, while Lucy was cooking, Dylan knocked on her door. There were many things he really could not understand. Why did Lucy know the insurance code of Rod's family? Moreover, she also knew that Rod's family had a very old violin. These things could not be explained by coincidence. At this time, Lucy honestly said that she often had memory images in her mind. Those memories did not belong to her at all. Dylan felt confused when he heard Lucy's words. He was disappointed and decided to leave. Lucy hurriedly chased after Dylan and mentioned the case she was following. Lucy's sixth sense told Lucy that a boy named Aiden might be in danger. Although Dylan did not believe in the sixth sense, he still agreed to investigate, because Lucy had previously predicted that the Mason family would have trouble, and that prediction came true. Perhaps Lucy had a connection with the serial killer. The next day, Dylan and Nick found Aiden's ex-girlfriend. The two asked Mary about Aiden's whereabouts, but Mary's mental state seemed unstable. There was a lot of noise in her room. A man kept urging her to close the door. Dylan suspected that Mary might be being controlled by someone. To clarify the situation, he and Nick set up an ambush outside. Sure enough, they saw the man beating Mary. This was what Nick hated the most. He immediately took the tools from the trunk and rushed upstairs. The bald man saw this and rushed over. The two immediately started fighting. In the chaos, Mary took the opportunity to escape. Nick quickly knocked down the bald man. Then he planned to take the bald man to the police station. But as soon as the two of them reached the door, the bald man was hit hard and fainted. After Nick knocked down the attacker, another man rushed over with a knife. At this time, Nick was exhausted, and he was no match for this man. In the critical moment, Dylan appeared, but he was quickly overwhelmed by the man in the hat. While he was about to deal with Dylan, Nick took a weapon and stabbed him in the leg. Immediately after that, he received a kick from Dylan. Finally, the two policemen successfully arrested the criminal. At 3:33 the next morning, Lucy woke up from her dream. She heard a noise coming from her son's room, so she rushed over to check. When Lucy opened the door, she saw Eden repeatedly hitting his head on the pillow. Lucy rushed over to stop him. Unexpectedly, he said that this was Mia's house. Their whole family lived there, but Lucy thought he was sick. The next day, Lucy followed the address Dylan gave her to find Aiden's girlfriend's house. Mary revealed that Aiden was hiding in a racetrack. Meanwhile, Dylan was sorting through the photos the killer left in the room. He saw a photo of Aiden taken while racing. Could the killer's next target be Aiden? Lucy had already arrived at the racetrack. Aiden was indeed hiding there. This guy looked like a playboy. When Aiden heard Lucy introduce herself as being from a child protection organization, he immediately pulled out a knife. Obviously, Aiden didn't believe that Lucy came here out of goodwill. Just then a car suddenly drove up. Lucy had a feeling that the person in the car had bad intentions. She told Aiden not to make a sound. A moment later, the car turned around and left. Lucy quickly called Dylan for help. However, no one answered. At that time, Dylan was on his way to the racetrack. racetrack. He had just received the address from Mary, but the direction sound was so loud that he could not hear the phone ring. Aiden realized the danger and immediately turned around and ran away. Although Dylan did not receive a call from Lucy, he happened to see the car that had just left the racetrack. Dylan immediately called his colleague to look up the license plate number, but the result was that no data was found. Dylan quietly followed the car. It quickly turned into a small road and stopped. Then the person in the car opened the door and got out. He also carried a large gun. Kevin pointed the gun straight at Dylan. Kevin seemed to be very familiar with Dylan. He ran away after cutting the electric wire to block the Purring road. The trouble didn't stop there. Aiden's boss came looking for him. The day before, Nick had arrested 3 of his subordinates. This matter was still unsolved. The boss gave Aiden a knife to kill Nick. Because the police had already found Mary, they would soon find Aiden too. This put pressure on Aiden. That night, Aiden sneaked into Nick's house and murdered his entire family. When Dylan heard the news, he cried in pain. He deeply regretted stopping the murderer that day. If the murderer had killed Aiden that day, things might have been different. At this moment, Dylan suddenly realized something. Could the murderer have the ability to predict everything? First Rod, then Mason, and now Aiden. All 3 of them had violent natures. The murderer seemed to be killing to prevent another murder. A few days later, the case still had no progress. As Lucy was driving her son home, Mia suddenly jumped in front of the car. Luckily, Lucy was able to brake in time. Otherwise, she would have hit May. This was not the first time this had happened. May often ran around on the street. Lucy felt angry, so she stopped her car and knocked on Mia's door. Lucy asked Debbie to control Mia better. Debbie asked if Mia had run in front of Lucy's car, but Mia shook her head and denied it. But at this moment, Lucy was very surprised, because at this moment, Lucy saw Mia wearing a yellow shirt, but now the girl in front of Lucy was wearing a different shirt. Lucy began to suspect that she might have seen wrongly, but after Lucy asked Eden about it, he also nodded in confirmation that he had seen it too. Lucy and Eden returned home worriedly. They found Dylan sitting in front of the door. After losing his teammates, he was so sad that he could not continue investigating. Suddenly, Lucy's hallucinations appeared again. She saw Dylan's face covered in blood. Immediately after, more images appeared in Lucy's head. At this moment, Lucy's memories suddenly became clear. Time seemed to have passed by in the blink of an eye. Lucy wore a dark shirt and went to the prison. She visited an old man with silver hair. Before coming here, Lucy had done a thorough investigation. This old man was the one who killed Rod and Mason. He was a serial killer. Lucy's sixth sense also showed that another murder had happened. That incident took place about 50 years ago. A 9-year-old boy named David killed his father. Since then, the boy mysteriously disappeared. No one knew where he was. Then the images gradually disappeared. Lucy returned to reality and called Dylan. She told him about David's story. When Dylan finished listening, he felt like his head was exploding because he couldn't understand what was going on. Lucy tried to recall the images she had seen. It seemed that David had a younger brother who lived in their city. Dylan didn't believe in sixth sense, so he decided to test it out for himself. While the two of them were driving to David's younger brother's house, Lucy accidentally saw another ring on her ring finger. A memory immediately flashed through her mind. When she was wearing a pure white wedding dress and marrying Dylan, Nick was also among the guests. That scene made her feel extremely surprised. Not long after, the two of them arrived. Everything was just as Lucy had said. David really did have a younger brother, and 50 years ago, David really did kill his father. However, David's younger brother said that every year on his birthday, he saw a red sports car. David also sent a text message to his younger brother saying, "You are the first person I saved." Dylan received a voice message again. The two of them went back to the car and listened to it over and over again. The voice sounded very familiar. Lucy was sure it was the old man with silver hair that she had seen in her memory. She also heard the sound of a train whistle. In the city, there weren't many places with railway tracks. Places where trains could honk were becoming increasingly rare. Dylan quickly looked up the train schedule to find information. He immediately eliminated some unlikely locations. Finally, only an abandoned factory remained. Dylan immediately asked for help from the police, but his superiors scolded him. Dylan was a policeman, but he relied on a woman's intuition to solve the case. This was too humiliating. Dylan had no other choice, so he planned to go to the factory himself. Lucy objected strongly after hearing this, because she had seen him collapse on the snowy slope before. But at this moment, Dylan was completely agitated. In fact, he did not trust Lucy. However, this was really too strange. It could not be explained by coincidence. Dylan had to verify for himself whether everything was true or not. When he arrived at the abandoned factory, the walls there were also covered with photos. Dylan immediately saw the picture of Eden, and there was also a man tied to a chair inside. Dylan quickly untied him. The man panicked and ran away, but after he had only run a short distance, he was shot by a bullet. Immediately after, Kevin entered entered the factory, Dylan rushed out from a hidden corner to attack Kevin. Kevin was also David, the 9-year-old boy who had killed his father 50 years ago. Each of Dylan's moves was easily neutralized by David. This match was completely devoid of suspense. After only 3 moves, Dylan was subdued. His face was continuously hit by many heavy punches. David got into the car with the intention of escaping, but as soon as he started the car, he was hit by Lucy's car. Just like that, David was taken to the police station, but no matter how hard the police tried, David refused to confess anything. He only agreed to meet Lucy alone. Coincidentally, Lucy also wanted to meet David. She was very curious to know why he killed his father, but he was agitated and said that his father wanted to kill him first. Lucy didn't really understand. At this point, David began to tell his story. 50 years ago, David was born into an extremely wealthy family. His parents had always loved him since he was young. 2 years later, David had a younger brother. At first, the family of 4 lived very happily, but the happiness did not last long. David's father's business failed. He became irritable and irritable. He also had another woman outside. Because of that, David's parents divorced. One day, David's father took him and his younger brother to the edge of the cliff. The father asked them to close their eyes to repent for their mother's mistakes. At that time, David still did not understand the meaning of that sentence. He obediently closed his eyes. Unexpectedly, the father drove the car straight into the sea. That day, all 3 of them drowned. As soon as the accident happened, there was another incident. The timeline of life began to reverse. After David was reborn, suddenly had a sixth sense. At first, David thought it was just an illusion, but with each reincarnation, the feeling became stronger and stronger. Finally, David believed and pieced together the memories completely. David realized that only by killing his father could he and his brother escape death. That night, David took a knife and attacked his sleeping father. Then David ran away from home. However, a 9-year-old child could not hide for long, so the police quickly caught David. After that, David continuously tried and failed in the reincarnation cycles. Finally, he found a way to escape capture. From then on, he began to pay attention and exploit this ability. One time, David met a little girl in the park. The two just looked at each other. Then he saw the scene of her family's car overturned. All 4 of them did not survive. When the cycle repeated, David punctured the tire of that car. That helped avoid a catastrophic accident. When David learned that the girl's family was saved, he was very happy. Began to see himself as a messenger of justice. David deliberately collected information about accidents and murders. Then he organized, recorded, and stored that information. Thanks to that, David saved some victims. Back in reality, Dylan asked if David really had the ability to see the future. Why didn't he prevent the 9th of November incident? David replied that he couldn't prevent the 9th of November incident. However, he affirmed that he had prevented the 7th of December attack. When Dylan asked what the 7th of December incident was, David told him the reason why he killed Rod. That was because if Rod didn't die, he would rape and kill 2 girls. Hearing this, Lucy saw 2 bodies floating on the water. David said that if he didn't kill Mason, he would kill his wife and children. David wanted to kill Aiden, but Dylan stopped him. That's why Nick's whole family was murdered. This sentence touched Dylan's pain. He found a notebook on David. The writing inside the notebook was scribbled, hard to read. The content of the writing was really hard to understand. The notebook did not have the ability to regenerate itself. Wasn't planning like this a waste of time? However, David insisted that he was training his memory. David told Dylan to try flipping to the last page of the notebook. Dylan lowered his head and did as he was told. But when he saw the content on it, he was immediately afraid, because on the last page of the notebook, there was a line written very beautifully. "Police, is my handwriting better?" Even though the truth was right before his eyes, Dylan still did not want to believe it, because if he believed it, he would have to accept the fact that he had indirectly killed his teammates. Nick and Lucy completely believed it. David really had a sixth sense. David said a lot of things, but his purpose was not to convince Dylan, but to impress Lucy, because in some reincarnation, David would have to spend 25 years in prison because of Lucy. He hoped that she would remember this, so that in the next life she would not put him in prison again. David kept reminding Lucy that he hoped this sentence would be engraved in her soul. Then David asked another question. What is worse than what your father went through? That question was like a spell that made Lucy remember what happened in her previous life. Her mother did something stupid one night. It was 3:33 a.m. Lucy had seen her mother's body with her own eyes. To stop her mother, she sought death. David went to Lucy's house and removed firing pin from the gun, but while David was confused, he dropped one. Lucy's mother pulled the trigger, but the bullet did not fire. Thanks to that, she was able to keep her life. Since David was talking more and more nonsense, Dylan told Lucy to go out first. Before Lucy left, she asked David one last question. Lucy asked if she had ever married Dylan, but David immediately denied it. David also said that Dylan should not be here. David used a string to explain everything to Lucy. He said that each death death of a person is like a knot on a string. The whole life is the distance between two knots. David used to think that reincarnation is a straight line, but later he realized that the cycle of reincarnation is a circular curve. It is like rotating around an object. Such a parallel world is really chaotic. This leads to frequent confusion. For example, Eden did not belong to this world. He came here due to an accident. Therefore, Eden witnessed another event. While James and Eden were talking, he poured the whole bottle of wine on Eden's head. But Eden still didn't show any anger. Eden secretly took James's phone and left a message for Lucy. When James discovered that the phone was missing, he went into Eden's room. At some point, his clothes were on fire. Eden was still sitting there without him knowing. James could have saved Eden, but James chose to close the door. James left Eden to die in the fire. Lucy left the police station and saw the missed call. She opened the voice message and heard her son's voice. Eden said that his father made him cold and he wanted his mother to come back to him. Immediately, at the end of the voice message, Eden said, "I love you, Mom." This was the first time the boy confessed his feelings to his mother. Lucy was deeply moved by her son's words. However, when she got home, the fire was raging. Lucy did not risk it and rushed in to look for her son. Meanwhile, in another place, David broke the handcuffs and escaped. When Dylan caught up, he only saw a blurry figure. The colleague fell into the sea of fire. Lucy saw images from her past life. At that time, she became a police officer and married Dylan. During a mission, Lucy saved Debbie's whole family from the sea of fire. It turned out that the burn on Debbie's face was a memory from her past life. Today's movie ends here. See you again in the next videos.